time to read, time to walk, time to just go out and sometimes have a different perspective.
If we didn't have a proud knowledge, then maybe our brain were just a clean state. I'm looking at this new entity now who maybe want to learn, but have not enough proud knowledge. But this person is put in an environment where there might be a lot of things happening. Would he or she be able to learn? How would he or she learn? Maybe you put such a person in an environment, say in a natural environment, for example.
People don't know what they don't know. And I think that's why you work with people who are experts. And one of the things I often, when I worked as an academic advisor or academic interventionist no one should know you better than you. And in my work, I do coaching, working with parents of young adults with disabilities, but also I've been trained as a mental health counselor as well. So what is it that we're trying to do? What is it that you want for your own life?
Hi, I thank you for checking out Obehi Podcast. We encourage people to own their story and share it with the world to expand their purpose. Before we start this episode, I have something to quickly ask you. Are you a purpose-driven entrepreneur? Do you want to cut across the noise and attract your ideal client by leveraging your story? Then pay attention. I have a signature program that can help you own your story. A 5-step training program to reshape your narrative for business and professional life, and in less than 19 days. The link is what you see on your screen. academy.aclasses.org/story. This is what we have understood. Storytelling is the most powerful instrument known to man. And this is what that means. You can either own your story and use it to advance your purpose in your business and professional life, or someone else will do. The choice is yours. Now let's get started with today's episode of the Obehi Podcast.
I'm one of 9 children. My mom had a variety of jobs. Her most recent was working in a nursing home. I am next to the youngest. So I only have one younger sister and everyone else is older than me. I grew up in a place called Diaspora, Florida, which is in northern Florida, right across the Georgia line on I-75. So grew up in a rural community, and we lived what we called in the country. So I like the peacefulness of being outside. We didn't necessarily grow up with a lot of money. So one of my joys is reading, and I love to read even to this day. And I love being outside, and I love the peacefulness of being outside, and just that those things you can use to center yourself, and to I guess I would say to center yourself, but also to recalibrate your mind. So I love reading. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so in a book I could go anywhere I desired. I could learn about things that I might never experience in my personal life. But then later I learned using neuroscience is that the more experiences you have, the more things you have to then attach learning to. So, when some of the things when we, look at some of the disparities in children learning, is that some children have a more rich experience in life. So they get to know more things, and then they have more things to attach learning to.
Yeah, of course, you already have shared with us about you, but I still want to spend a bit more time there. Mostly in your young adolescent now, what do you remember seeing around you? Take us to the world that you see as a young person growing up. Help us understand that.
Oh, as a young person growing up, we lived in the country. My dad was a farmer, so not far from where we lived was a field that had like cows, pigs. Across the way, other people had farms, so it was large and vast. So there's pigs in a pen. There was I can't even remember some of the things. I think they called it a corn shed where you kept the corn to feed the animals. My dad also, plowed fields. We grew up, so we had to catch a bus to school. I grew up at the beginning of when they had, I think, passed when they passed the desegregation laws. But my first couple years in school was in a segregated environment. So then later, I think third grade was the first grade that I attended that was in an integrated environment. So remembering some things, remembering stories, some things are stories I've heard, others are stories I lived. So growing up in the country, I don't know, I think even after I retired from the military, is seeking that peace and solitude that environment provided me when I was younger. Living in the country, peacefulness, um, and always being around family. One of our traditions today is that if possible, we try to get together as a family. And for us, Thanksgiving is one of our favorite holidays. And we tried, different people hosting um, for a little while, but then we converted back to coming back home. And if you can come, and then join the rest of the family for Thanksgiving. So I think that, um, the memories of a more peaceful environment still plays a part in my life today. Um, I'm an introvert, I guess you would say, by nature. So, and I guess I've been a bookworm for as long as I can remember. So I still seek that time, alone. Seek that time and that time of peace, normally early in the morning, before others in my home get up. So I take time in the morning, normally to read, sometimes just to spend time alone, sometimes to watch TV, just kind of enjoying that time, with myself.
You have been in the Air Force. Could you tell me what led you to that trajectory? Was there any particular incident that led you to the military, and what has been your experience there? Share with us. Of course, all these are part of the
Well,
story now.
I would say the thing that led me to the military was all growing up, you would hear the stories of, I guess from my mother and from my father. My father, or our father, was a World War II veteran. So he had served during World War II. And so I remember hearing and followed the path of several of my brothers who had joined the Army. My dad was in the Army Air Corps, and they would always suggest that the military and education were paths to success. And so I joined the military as a way to, I guess you would say, be able to take care of myself, as a way to have my own, to be able to, take care of myself, as, as a path to success. So I joined the military at, I think I was 18. I think I joined the military in September, but I didn't ship till January the following year. So we in our family, it was the expectation was that everyone will graduate high school. So whatever it takes, whatever support is needed, is not a it's not an option to not graduate. And I think someone had told my mom early on that if our oldest brother graduate, then the rest of us would follow. And so I'm, next to the youngest. And then I have one younger sister. So everyone had followed that path of graduating. So I looked at the military as a way that I could take care of myself. I could go to college. I could do some of those things that I had wanted. And then I also had the example of others who had gone into the military. And the other thing I kind of learned was seemed like you were appreciated more once you went and did something successful and then to come back. And when I was in the military, I had 3 jobs. So I had a job as an administrator, admin, they call it. And then I retrained later and I became a substance abuse counselor. And then later, substance abuse and mental health merged. And so then I became a mental health tech. So I saw the military as a way also of job training, that you can get skills that you can use within the military, but also outside the military as well.
So, looking back to the military and what you have learned there, what would you say have been the most important part of this adventure for you? Because you enter now because you want to serve your nation, which is something of an honor, because it is really an honor to serve the people around you, to serve your country. But you also entered there because you want to become a better version of yourself. And because you learn now through your family history that this was something that needed to be done if you want to become a better person, okay, to also excel. So tell me, when you look at your adventure in the military, what are you mostly satisfied about in your journey?
Most satisfied. I think probably my journey would be the people whose path I crossed and who crossed my path. That I had people I got to learn from and I had people I got to teach. But a lot of those things that I benefited from being in the military were extensions of lessons that I had been exposed to as a young person. Sometimes when I reflect back, when you think about just respect for authority, I think that goes back to respect for your elders. Doing your best work every day goes back to work ethics that you've observed or had prior to the military. The military kind of focuses a lot on taking care of those small things like your uniform. And is it pressed? Does it look presentable? Does it look the best within your ability? So those things, I remember growing up and hear my mom often saying, you can have the raggediest clothes around, but just make sure they're clean. Whatever you have, show it in the best light. And that you're not worse than anybody, but you're not better than anybody. You're of equal value to all. That took a little bit for me to kind of come to. And sometimes it butted up against some of my own personal values. Because I grew up hearing that, other people kind of give you accolades. Whereas when you get in competitive environments, you've got to be able to pitch yourself and promote yourself and share what are those things that you're good at or better at. So that was a little bit foreign. The other thing was in the military, you compete for promotion. And that if you pass a different test and you are promoted, then you hold those positions of authority. So for me, initially, it was different being younger and outranking people who were older. That was a little bit of a challenge at first because I'd grown up and it was kind of ingrained in me, that respect for authority. But then you have to rethink who is in authority here, you know. And so some of those things I learned good lessons, but I had to relearn some lessons as well. Is that when you are in that position of authority, grab it, take it, and lead, you know. So though, so you learn different things, but the one wonderful thing I think about the military is that it pulls people from all spheres of life, and that we've got to learn to work together. And in basic training, you got to learn to live together. Um, and you got to learn how to deal with other people. I know in my flight, I was one of the younger people. Um, I was one of the, younger people, and then I learned also you're given opportunities, but also you may get fired from those opportunities as well. Like, okay, I want you to do this, but then you tried and then you're like, okay, this ain't working out, and then you get fired. And then and I think an early lesson for me was that you learn more from failure than success.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And the learning, it's actually what we're going to be spending a lot of the time on today, using your expertise as a neuroscientist. That is important for us. But we're sort of just on in the beginning part of it, because here in Obehi Podcast, we sort of love to talk a lot about storytelling, which is our experiences, what we have passed through in life that help us to become, if you can say, expert in our field. But before we start talking about your expertise, we'd like to talk about your background, where you are coming from, who are you, in line with who do you have met in your journey. So this is where we are still at today. Looking at that moment that you were in the military, was there a particular incident that you always remember, maybe because of the circumstances of this situation, you want to always keep it in memory for any reason whatsoever, that you take along with you in line with learning? And because we are going to be talking about the learning, unlearning, and relearning. So what would you share in line with that?
I would say for me, one of one of my best jobs. I was in the military 30 years, and one of the jobs that I remember the most was when I got to be what they call an instructor supervisor for the mental health courses. And that my job was to train people to become mental health techs and then to send them to the field to take care of the mental health and wellness of the force. And learning about boundaries, learning from other people, sometimes being prepared, sometimes not being prepared. I just remember the person that I worked with kept saying to me, I'm not doing another inspection. So you need to pay attention to what I'm doing because I'm not doing another inspection. And I kept thinking, oh, he's not, he's going to be here. I can depend on him. But also during that time, we needed to convert a course from one that was to one that would be, at the same time teaching the old and teaching the new. And then at that time, I think it was maybe four of us creating a course to teach a career field. But then we were going to go from one course to 4 courses. But initially it was just 4 of us. And you're teaching the old, you're teaching the new, but also things are not as you would have them to be. So a period of transition, a period of stress, but knowing you got to do what it is you're going to do. Later, that job of teaching 3 levels became an entry point to being a different type leader later for my career field, because then later I became the career field manager, where I was the senior mental health tech for the Air Force. But the benefit had been being in that one position was getting to meet everybody who was in the career field to later then be able to lead them. And so knowing the array of talent, that we had, and then also hearing people's thoughts about what they wanted and what they didn't want. But then also knowing I have a mission to combine the career field, despite maybe people not wanting to merge together. So being able to merge people who don't want to be merged, or even who don't even want these new skills, but the military or the Air Force had already decided, no, instead of 2, you will become 1. And I think we get the best of 2 different worlds. But both people were satisfied, I think, with what they were already doing and didn't really necessarily want this new thing. So I think just lessons with people. And when people tell you things, believe them. Even if you want different, sometime you got to do that mindset shift that, okay, this is direction we're going, and that you have a decision to make. Are you going, or are you going this way, or are you going that way? Because sometimes decisions are made, and then now you've got to have a mindset shift in whether you go or not, and then how will you go?
Now, this is some of the last question I'm going to ask you there. Then we'll move into what you're doing today. The training, because now you were training there even while you were still in the Air Force. Was it there you started to train people, learning how people learn, or have you been doing this before? That you just have the chance to improve more as a trainer right there within the Air Force?
I would say to myself that I'm a lifelong learner. In the military, we get training for our jobs, but we also get leadership training, where, we pull, and then you have different levels of leadership, and as you go up in the ranks, there's certain leadership training that you are given based on your rank, how long you've been in. And then also I got training with my job as well. And so some things I learned, some things I wanted to learn more. And then sometimes it was just by happenstance that you maybe sit in someone else's class, because there's a qualification that goes with being an instructor, where you will backseat someone else, where you're observing them teach, because you've got to also personalize your own lesson plans. You've got to personalize your lesson plans, because doing that part, you're observing, and then eventually you're going to be the one teaching, as well as there will be people through your qualification to back grade you or presenting the lesson. And then there's a sheet, and then you've got to score a certain score on that, or you may not qualify, or you may have to repeat this process. And that I was reminded of that when I went later after I had retired and I got a master's in education. The same process of someone observing your teaching, evaluating, seeing if you're doing good or not doing well in what you are doing. And so you start to see the value of feedback. And I would say a lot for me, some of the things I learned and did, a lot of things were self-taught because people think because you move up the ranks, obviously you know how to do things. But then you can get to a point in your career that you always, I think, need to have a mentor and also have a protege, somebody that I'm learning from, but also someone who I can pour into as well. So I think the military is good for that. But I think sometimes the one thing I would say we all could do better at is get that benefit of feedback of things we're doing well, but things we could do better. And I think as a society, we could do better at providing honest feedback to people, but in the capacity of being helpful, but authentic. And how could you do better?
All right. Now, at what point did you get more involved in neuroscience? Because that is where we are today. Try to understand how to leverage the power of neuroscience in our communication, in storytelling like we do here. Because we want to better understand the people that we are dealing with, people that we are talking with. For us to be able to do that, sometimes we also need to understand how they think, how they function, how they learn, so that how we might be able to learn too, maybe be able to better interact with them.
I would say when I got more involved in neuroscience, I think I was an academic counselor, an academic interventionist, working with military students on a military base. And then I was learning more about like how do people learn? You know, I had already had a master's in education, but then I started wanting to learn more about adult learning. And then also my master's in education deals with special education. So these unique learners and how do they learn and how do we maximize their capabilities? So then I started working with. So I was an academic counselor. So I always would look at how do you build on what you already know? And so I learned some from my counterparts, you know, who I would have a partner with me. And that I would learn how do you teach somebody something they don't know? How do you attach the prior knowledge to the new knowledge? And then also I start getting into, you know, learn different learning styles. But the one thing that made me want to learn more was I was in a position for a number of years, and I was starting to feel as if, I'm feeling stagnated. What else could I do to learn more about me, but also learn more about others that I'm working with? And that's when I got into neuroscience, and I went through a program called Optimind, where their focus was on to use neuroscience for good and not just focusing on the deficits of when something goes wrong with someone's brain. So if you can figure out what went wrong, how can you use neuroscience to optimize what the brain is also capable of? So for me, it was that feeling stagnant and what else could I learn that could enrich my own understanding of myself, but also my understanding of others and how they respond and react to different situations.
But what really is neuroscience for an average person who do not understand this term? How would you describe it so that an average person can understand it?
I would say it's how the mind and the brain works, and that there are certain things that are already embedded within us. that once we become aware of them, then we can do something about them. And sometimes we've got to dispel some myths. Like we cannot continue to learn, that we can't reshape our brain, that we can't learn new things. And then, some of our practices and the benefits of them. We think about gratitude or praying or meditating, how those things are good for the brain. The whole thing of how does your hydration and what you eat also impact how you think? So it's just understanding your own brain better. And how does the neurons work, and how does learn and process work, and how those things that are embedded within us, whether, most of us have heard of fight versus flight or to freeze when something happens. Some of those things are within us, and they still will react. I remember growing up that I've always been one who asked lots of questions. And my younger sister would say to me, Iris, you always talking. And I'm like, yeah, I'm always talking. But she said, sometimes when you're talking, you got to pay attention. Like, I see a snake. We need to get out of these bushes. But for me, the fight or flight wasn't there because I didn't see the snake. She did. But her fear was controlled, but it was like, we need to move. We need to get out of here. So sometimes just that lack of awareness, we don't, run, and then you've heard that expression when they talk about, when people are trying to run away and they'll say, I don't have to be faster than everybody else. I just got to be faster than you. So but fear can be a powerful motivator, but fear also can paralyze us and keep us from growing as well. But understanding your brain better and what are some of those things and how does it work, so that's what I would say, understanding your own brain better. And how can you change things that you want to change? And just understanding once you know, then you can do something different.
Understanding our brain better. Is this something that ordinary people can do in the sense of, can an average person understand his or her brain if maybe have gotten access to some information, maybe understand maybe some training like from people like you, or do one really need to have expert understanding before they can understand how the brain functions?
Most people will find some kind of motivator. Just like for me, when I was feeling unchallenged, when I knew I wanted something more, then I went to look for it. And what else could I do different? Many people, I would say, go in, then go out. Many people will want to point their fault. And I think initially I was externally focused, that I was not being challenged because I wasn't being given the challenges versus me creating other challenges for me to grow. So are you internally motivated, externally motivated? Most of the times we will find something that we're not happy with. And then what do I attribute that to? And a lot of times what's happening is it's my reaction or my reflection on what's happening with me. And what do I attribute that to? And sometimes it's some of those things that are, within us, that how I view the world. And I may just not understand that that's just how my brain works. And that's what happens in relationships. So I think you can learn from someone like me, and that I can help you move or get to where you're trying to go in your particular situation.
Thank you for that. Now, for an average person, where would they start from? You try to understand how their brain work, because I'm beginning to see now that we're talking of being able to take control of yourself. Because if you know how you react, if you know how you function, then of course you will be able to optimize. I think that is where the optimization will be effective at the end of the day. Because if you don't know how you work, how you function, you don't even know what to optimize, because you might be optimizing the wrong thing, then you will just be moving towards the wrong direction.
Yeah, I would say, what is it that you desire? And it could be in a variety of ways. It could be a business, it could be a family, it could be parenting, it could be working with different people. And do you desire to improve? And then who can help you improve that? Oftentimes, the oftentimes it just deals with you as an individual. Like, what is it that you desire in your life? And then how do we create that for you? Because, everywhere I go, there I am. And so it's not always external and it's not always career. It could just be personal satisfaction. And that so much of, people don't know what they don't know. And I think that's why you work with people who are experts. And one of the things I often, when I worked as an academic advisor or academic interventionist no one should know you better than you. And in my work, I do coaching, working with parents of young adults with disabilities, but also I've been trained as a mental health counselor as well. So what is it that we're trying to do? What is it that you want for your own life? So I think sometimes it's just having a conversation like you and I are having, and that if you listen closely, you can hear what it is the person want or desire. But instead of me trying to decide for them, it's just a series of questions where we explore that together, and then see, can I help you? How would you like to be, helped? But I think sometimes we know within ourselves that I'm satisfied, but a lot of times we are the ones who limit, ourselves, thinking we cannot do something. And that I can, I just got to figure out how. And that I accept responsibility for that. And then and when I want to know I want to do something different, then who can help me?
Thank you so much for that. That is very important. Of course, there are a lot of things that you said there that, okay, I'm not going to be picking on each and every one of them, but there are a lot of value there, and especially understanding the fact that we all need help from time to time. We cannot do it all alone. And I think it is right that we should ask for help, because I think life is supposed to be lived like that. But there was something that you mentioned before that I think maybe we might need to revisit again, which is how you learn. I want you to spend some time there looking at it from the point of view of neuroscientists. How do we really learn? Share with me.
I will, share my experience from how I have learned. I still reflect to this day. Oh, I don't remember what grade I was in, maybe fourth grade, when they determined you got some kind of learning difference. And then you go through these assessments. And they would give you a list of words, and I want you to say these words. if you've never seen that word, if you don't understand phonics, or you don't understand how, or just words that some words just don't follow the rules. And to this day, I still remember, I think the word was beige, and I didn't know how to say it. So I don't remember what I said. I just know now I know how to say beige and I recognize beige. But just learning to read, where they talk to kids about them learning, I think it's like 100 words that they want them to know. But now I think they're talking about like read 1,000 books before kindergarten, where you've got to have something to attach learning to. So it goes back to that exposure to learning, the exposure to education, the exposure to books. My dad was a reader. And I remember when I went in the military, I would always buy him these books, and a lot of them were like military history and this and that. And I think, oh, okay, I'm gonna send him like 5 books and these will last him months. And then, he'd be done reading those books quickly, like 2 weeks or a week. But it's that learning, what is my baseline of experiences and words and things I've learned and been exposed to, that now I can link learning to. Not that I know everything expertly, but I can compare it, with you, or to say, hey, what does that make you think of? Like when you're teaching them something. What does that make you think of? And that whatever they're thinking of is already in their head. And now can we attach this new thing to that? If you're a visual learner, could you draw a picture of that? How are you seeing that in your head? And now could we label that using something already? Like we're talking about the heart, and it talks about vessels and things. If they got experience in maybe putting things together, like pipes or things like that, can we attach that to this new thing we're trying to learn? How do you see that how do you see that? And based on what the words say, can we create a picture of that? And now can you explain that to me in words? The other thing could be, how do you do that? Can you show me how to do that thing that you were just taught about? And actually doing mock training. We do this often when we're talking about public speaking, like get up and practice your talk. But could we do that with other things to show me how you do that thing? And even if you don't have it, can you do that? By just talking me through it. But as you talk me through it, you're actually pretending to do it with your hands. So a lot of things, people know more than we often give them credit for. And there's more than one type of intelligence. But we like IQ tests. But we have emotional intelligence. We have other ways that people learn. Some people are expert at knowing how to read people. So I just think that I've got to have a rich set of experiences that then I can add learning to.
Now, are there limits to what we can learn? Can we learn anything? Can we learn everything? In that, what I'm trying to say here now, imagine somebody just pick his belonging and go into the forest, to the nature. How are we supposed to understand? Are we supposed to understand what the information that we have around us? Maybe based on what are we even going to base the information on? Say maybe somebody were to find him or herself in a natural environment with no one to tell you this is what this is and all of that. maybe that is where you are supposed to learn. How are you supposed to learn in a situation like that?
Going back to my own experiences is, I think, sometimes being aware of your own internal state. Some people like nature because you can get overstimulated by other people. You can get aggravated by other people. I think sometimes now we are always in constant motion. That being to have that quiet solitude, time to think, time to experience you, time to be aware of, I would say, just quiet. Time to read, time to walk, time to just go out and sometimes have a different perspective. Sometimes it's like, instead of tuning in, we may need to tune out. We need to be aware of our surroundings and then being aware of the impact we have on others and the impact that others have on us. Being aware of, how do you experience the world when you're alone and what kind of feelings maybe come up? But also, how do you experience the world when you're around people who love and care about you, that you can depend on, that you can go to for support, that you have indeed a good relationship with? And then sometime, I think you need that time by yourself where you can just reflect on you and what's going on in you and with you. And then inviting people in and inviting people out of your life if they're not enriching it. And I think those are one of the things. Sometimes we do things out of obligation versus want to, or this person adds value to me in my life.
Thank you for that. And now I'm still wondering, if we didn't have a proud knowledge, say maybe our brain were just a clean state, and we are supposed to learn, we find ourselves in a situation, because I'm asking this question in line with what some people will describe as the subconscious. And sometimes all the information, if subconscious were like a boss, all the information in the boss are not really our experience, because we haven't lived enough to be able to have all the information that we are going to be tapping into. Of course, this might also depend on what is our inclination, what is our orientation. Now, I'm looking at this new entity now who maybe want to learn, but have not enough proud knowledge. But this person is put in an environment where there might be a lot of things happening. Would he or she be able to learn? How would he or she learn? So maybe you put such a person in an environment, say in a natural environment, for example.
I think there's always ways to learn. We learn from ourselves. We learn from others. There are natural courses of things that happen within our environment. There are sounds. My oldest son happens to be deaf. So sometimes a lot of his information is coming in through his eyes, not through his ears. I think when we observe others, when we just observe, we learn lots of things from nature. We learn lots of things from watching animals and creatures around us. There's things in our natural state that we can learn from. We can learn from, plants. Just like plants need hydration to grow and thrive, people also need hydration to grow and thrive. that you can't continue to give, and not restore yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup or empty bucket. So you can learn a lot by observing others. You can learn a lot, and sometimes you can have false learning by observing others. You can be told something that's not true, but if you hear it enough, you begin to believe that. And then later, you may have to retrain your mind that that thing that I believed is not true. Hearing someone say to you, you're never going to amount to anything. And then after a while, you start believing you're never going to amount to anything. And then someone else you encounter says, oh, you're the smartest person I've ever met. But now you're thinking, I'm not valuable, I'm worthless. I don't have anything to offer the world. So those encounters we have, but also we can learn from nature. We can learn from other people. We can learn from other people's kindness. But I think there's always something that we can, people or things that we can learn from. But to be aware. And I would also say, expect better of others. Because, sometimes I would ask the question, sometimes would be when a young soldier or a young airman, something was getting into trouble. And I would just say, so how would they have known to do different? Normally someone has to teach you, or you have to know innately, this is not good for me. I don't really like this environment. And sometimes environments change, or sometimes you realize, this is not working. I've got to make a different choice for myself. And if you have prepared yourself for different choices, then you have the option to do different. But if you just decide, okay, everybody else is going to do it, you may not do anything different, and you blame other people having that external locus of control versus internal locus of control that I can make decisions about.
Thank you for that. Now talking of this learning, being aware of certain knowledge. Maybe somebody be told that you amount to nothing, and this person believe in that. And I was thinking back to what you were sharing before of your sister. I think you said you were in the forest. Maybe your sister.
We were in the country. We were under a tree,
Yeah.
and I think we were picking blackberries.
Mm-hmm.
She saw the snake, but I did not.
Yeah, that's very important for me. Now, you didn't see the snake, but the snake is there. What I'm trying to understand is that if we are not exposed to the information around us, so with me now that if depending on the information we are exposed to, that is what determines how we react. Or is it based on the actual fact? Because the actual fact now, of course, the fact now we are going to read it from your sister, not from you. From your sister, there is a snake there, but you didn't see a snake, so you are not afraid of the snake, therefore you don't run from the snake. But your sister saw a snake, so she can run from the snake. I'm trying to see that there is this blurred line that separates what can be the reality, the objective reality from our reality. We might not necessarily be the truth, but if we believe it, then it is true for us. If we don't believe it, then it is not true for us. I don't know if you can help us clarify some things there in terms of the knowledge that we put in our head or the knowledge that we refuse to put into our heads, and how those knowledge might be conditioning us for good or for bad.
Well, I think the one thing that helped me is that I listened to what she said. And I think sometimes when we are learning and we're in environments with people, sometimes we've been conditioned that you can't trust that person. so I'm not going to listen to what they say. But then information and knowledge can come from many places. Maybe your environment, maybe people you're least likely to expect to learn. One of the things I learned, I think, in the military, maybe not even in the military, I think before the military, was that when people are talking to you, they're still invested in you. When they stop talking, sometimes they've lost hope. So sometimes a way a person's trying to motivate you may feel contrary to them caring about you, but oftentimes when people are trying to convey or pour into you, it may not feel that way, but often you have to listen or at least hear through the noise that when she was like, Iris, we need to get out of here. I could have kept talking and not paid attention to her. But then later, I would not be here probably talking to you because I may have been bit by that snake. So sometimes other people see things in you or around you or within you that you don't even see yourself. And then you've got to hone into those authentic relationships with others. And is this a value and can I use this? I'm not sure if I answered your question, but sometimes you just got to listen to others. And sometimes we're telling ourselves a story, but maybe the story is not even true. We can believe our own story, but the story is not based in fact. I could have still been willy-nilly and acted like, okay, there's nothing here. She's just exaggerating. Versus, oh, if she's saying this and she said it more than once, it's time for us to move and get out of here.
But is there a limit to that too? In that, should we always trust the people that are telling us something? What if the people are wrong? And how are we supposed to know?
Well, I think you can learn from positive as well as negative examples. Just because I may learn the lesson not to do something versus as well as the lesson to do something from a different person. So I think you've got to know you good or better so that you know things that are going to be helpful or not helpful for you and to you. And then having a trusted, I call it confidant, or even a counselor or a coach that and mentors that you are talking to on how do I deal with this situation. My younger sister and I probably talk more than me with my other siblings, in that someone who knows me and I trust them and I trust their judgment, not just someone I met one time and they're telling me this, and it may not be good, valuable advice.
Thank you for that. That's very important. So which means that if you have been able to build a relationship with a person, the person tells you something, you don't even need to doubt.
I think a lot of things is relationships and building those relationships and building those bonds and establishing that trust. But I think also sometimes you've got to create and build a relationship of trust and over time. And that we have what we call encoding, that I do what's familiar. I do what feels sometimes right, but it after I learn something, I may not even think about it anymore. I just do what I do. I stay in my comfort zone. But I trust my mother until, I guess you would say, maybe when she's untrustworthy. Um, but I think, things are naturally built over time and in relationship with others. And I think we tend to go with the familiar. So a lot of times we have people in our social network who are similar to us. And I still say one of the things the military taught me is to be around different types of people with different experiences, and that you can find what do we have alike, and that we're more alike than different. We've had different experiences, but as a people, we're more alike, and lots of things that are within people have been taught to them. It's, when we think about some implicit bias that they may not even be aware of, or prejudices, meaning to prejudge something. It's not just racial, that I prejudge or I think this way based on my other past experiences. And I haven't had a new experiences that test that prejudgment.
For that. Another thing that you also made mention of, I think maybe worthy of revisiting a bit, is when you talked of where the motivation is coming from. And I think you said something to the effect of internal and external motivation. Then later, of course, I think you referred to the same thing as the locus of control, which is, of course, they often say in psychology. Could you share how that might be different in terms of how we learn, whether we are having internal or external motivation? What difference does that make?
I would say how it makes a difference. Sometimes you don't even know what motivates you. What is it that make me? I'm a we call it an adult learner, but also I want to be a continual learner. That I keep learning different things and how to apply and manipulate the knowledge that I already have. But some people are used to being told what to do, where there's others who test those boundaries. And I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, asking for forgiveness versus permission. That there are some people who, once I know or I want to do this, I'm going to just go and do it. But a lot of people within themselves, they've already done the plan A, B, C. Whereas others, I'm just going to do exactly what you told me to do. But I didn't even think about what's going to happen if I do this thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to say they told me to do it, and I did it. Versus me, I would often ask questions. So why are we going to do this? What's the reason? What's the rationale? So I think sometimes finding what motivates you, are you motivated by fear? Like, okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to get in trouble. Or exploration. I'm going to just try it. Let's see what happens. But to know you. And then also, once you know you can see if I fit in or I don't fit in certain environments, like for employment or for even my social time. Do I want to spend time with this group of people? Do I find it enriching? Or am I doing it out of obligation? And then learning how to establish boundaries for yourself. Like, okay, no, I don't want to do that. Or no, I have something to do. I choose not to. I choose not to join you. And being okay with that, and it's my decision.
Okay, now, with your knowledge of neuroscience, are you able to learn about what motivates people? Whether they're actually motivated by fear, by joy, by revenge, or anything like that? Are you able to know what is motivating them?
I think through conversation, you can learn a lot about people. And normally, past is our predictor sometime for the future, unless we change are present unless we learn to do different.
And how would you do that? Say, for example, now you're the one that want to know the motivation of a person. How would you approach it to know?
I think sometimes using questionnaires, sometimes asking them what motivated them to even want to have a conversation with you, what kind of things they would like to have change. You can give them questionnaires that talk about their life, their lifestyle, what they're eating, sleeping, situations that they're encountering problems with, and how they would like those situations to be different.
Okay, if we say, maybe, for example, in our life or in our journey, we come to realize that maybe there are certain habits or attitude that we have that are maybe no longer serving us. We want to unlearn them. We want to cancel them from our experiences so that we can learn the right approach to do things. How would somebody approach a thing like that? And how practical is it even?
Well, I think it is possible to learn. I would want to know about the impact of their current behavior and how would they want to see it different. And then look at ways that they may need to change their mindset, their perspective. And then I think through practice, trying different things or to even challenge beliefs they have of themselves. But it's normally most people would tell you what they don't want versus what they do want. And I would want to try to get to what do you want? And then how do we create the path to get there?
But are there some methodology, a kind of a process to help you maybe change a kind of a mindset that you have to a mindset that you want? Are there a process to do that?
Yes, there are processes to do that. Some of it, some things that I think that are helpful for people to realize is to sometimes catch yourself and what are you saying to yourself when you're trying to do something else? What are you saying to yourself? What are you saying about yourself, about your capabilities? Sometimes journaling is good. Sometimes, creating affirmations that would change that mindset. Sometimes working with a coach or working with a therapist can help, depending on what the situation is, on what you want to change. And some things will take over time doing something different so that now this different thing becomes the thing that you do or that you say to yourself or that you create that new neural pathway to where you want to be, and that becomes the way. And sometimes it's easier to create a new one than trying to change an old one.
Yeah. Could you talk more about that, creating a new one, a new neural pathway?
Like create a new neural pathway, especially if it's something that is, yes, I would say encapsulated, like maybe like in pain and hurt. Instead of trying to change that, now we create this new, preferable, maybe even more pleasant way of being and doing versus trying to change the old way.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Now, what would be your final thought here, considering the conversation that we have had today?
I would say my frame of thought would be you are in control of your own life and your own destiny. You can choose the people and the pathways that you go. And I would say relook at who are those people that you have in your life. And are they adding to it or taking away from it? And that we can create the life that we desire. And I would say my company is called Internal Transitions. Everything has to take place within the mind. and then it can take place in real life. I think Stephen Covey said all things are created twice, first within the mind, then within reality.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time as well.